I am being watched. Welcome, everyone. This is Mailfuzz TV. I said that as if that was my name. It's not my name. Don't call me that. Welcome, I'm Peter. But we're going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 1, Episode 15. It is called Blue Code. So, full spoilers for the episode, per usual. So this one's about the infiltration of this smuggling group. At first, they kind of presented them at first as if they were just like diamond smugglers, who use like medical protocols to get through, border patrols. So the example we get at the start is this: they've got someone faking being sick so they can hide diamonds in their stretcher, and they're flown to the mainland to go to the hospital, and it's inside the stretcher has the diamonds, and so that's what I mean by that. But later on, they're just kind of like trafficking like drugs and stuff, like normal gangsters as well. So they've got a bouquet of types of criminal smuggling things that they do. Right? They're very well versed. But Reese infiltrates. In fact, the episode hits the ground running because he's already infiltrated when we start off. We don't waste time with him getting close to them. We kind of hear the conversation that obviously took place earlier between him and Finch to set up everything, but we realize that Reese is already there as the driver and that he's already part of this team. It turns out the big sort of reveal early on in the episode is that the main guy, there's like two main people in this group. One of them seems to be quite mean, and the other one looks kind of mean, but it doesn't seem as bad in the opening scene. But not too long after that, it turns out the meaner one. my wording here is very strange. Hold on a second. I just need his name. His name's, was it Michael? Yeah, I don't remember his name being Michael, which is apparently what his name is. But to be fair, he did have multiple names in this because it turns out he's an undercover cop. So the name that he's got in the gang is not his real name. So I'm probably that's probably what his real name was, and it didn't come up as much, or vice versa. But either way, we find out early on the sort of the ironic part of it is that Reese is undercover infiltrating this group, and then it turns out the person of interest, the one whose number they got, is also undercover in this group. He's an undercover cop. And the other guy, Vargas, in the group, who's actually the leader, he's the real bad guy. He's like really, really bad. Even though at first Michael seems like he is bad because he wants to kill someone. I didn't really recognize the actor playing Michael, but the actor playing Vargas, Jose Zuniga, I feel like I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to click on him and see if I recognize anything. Oh no, he was in Twilight. Do I remember him from that? I hope not. Oh, he was in the new Quantum Leap show. He was in an episode of Westworld. He was in the episode. It was in The Expanse for 10 episodes. Yeah, yes. He was Bull. He was Bill in The Expanse. That's what I'm recognizing him from. But clearly he's popped up in single episodes of a lot of other things. He's one of those guys. Also, there's a young guy on the team who is the actor who played the Penguin on the Gotham TV show. He's got a very distinct face. He seems really typecast because he's kind of this squirmy guy who's a bit of a wild card in this as well. It feels like he always seems to play the one who's a bit unhinged. That seems to be his thing. So we got that. Reggie Cathay also pops up in this in a very different part of the episode. So that was another face I recognized. There was a lot of faces in this one. But yeah, anyway, let's get into what's going on here. So it becomes this kind of race to try and figure out, Vargas is working with some dirty cops. The corrupt cops who sort of greenlight and kind of orchestrate a lot of the shady stuff. We kind of, I don't know if they've called them this before, but this episode they really start sticking to the name HR. They refer to these corrupt cops as a group by that name. So Vargas early on says, "Oh no, we shouldn't have a problem with cops because I've paid up with HR." And then later on, when Lionel's talking to some of the corrupt cops, they reference HR as well. So this is something that's definitely it's organized corruption. You have organized crime, and then there's also organized corruption seemingly inside the police department. But there's basically a worry that someone is going to tell Vargas that Michael's an undercover cop. So part of the episode is trying to deal with that and figure out who that could be. And Lionel ends up being heavily involved in that and trying to sort of erase, like, there's one file, there's like one hard copy of a file that sort of talks about the fact that this guy's an undercover cop, and he breaks in with the help of Finch to destroy it, which he does. But then someone from Internal Affairs, played by Reggie Cathy, comes in, and he turns out to be the corrupt one who was going to give Vargas the information. So he actually takes Fusco out to be killed. He takes him out to the woods, and there's a whole bit of tension here. I'm sort of like skipping to the end of this particular part of the plot, but it is kind of separate in a lot of ways from the rest of the episode. But Fusco is led out to the woods, and this corrupt IAD officer says to him, like, whoever you were working with, like, they have left you out to dry. No one cares about you. You're about to die, and it's not going to matter. No one's going to care about you. And there's maybe a moment where Fusco maybe believes it. Like, you know, I think we as the audience are like, oh, no. Reese is going to show up and save him at the last second, right? He's going to be saved. But there's definitely a moment here where, you know, I didn't really know which way it was going to go. What if this whole, you know, interaction was going to, like, turn Fusco bad again, or more bad, or like pivot him back to feeling like he can't trust Reese, and maybe Reese would have to, like, earn his trust back somehow later or something, if he ever even had it. But you know what I mean, like, in the sense that maybe Reese has been kind of taking Lionel for granted, and that maybe this would make Lionel realize that he's being used. In fact, the corrupt guy even says, you've been used by whoever this is, and they've left you out to dry. But of course, Reese does show up and take out this guy. But I really like this scene. I like Fusco here and all this. And then the idea that even if he doesn't realize it, you know, and by he I mean Reese, he's actually in a way kind of like showing Lionel that he's got his back here, even though he's still saying the same things. He's still talking to Fusco like he's a dirty cop, and Fusco even says here that he you know, he wants to expose all this and deal with this. Reese says, no, you can't, because you're more useful if the dirty cops trust you. So you're going to use the dirty cops, you're going to use HR to cover up this now dead body of this corrupt guy, and that'll have you on, like, you know, you'll be indebted to them, but they're going to keep you around, and they're going to use you as part of their team, part of their system, and you're more useful that way. And Lionel says that he was actually kind of liking not doing that stuff. He was liking feeling like he was a good guy for a while. And Reese basically says, tough, like, you're more useful this way. Like, this is the way it's got to be. But it is very interesting that now he's doing it reluctantly, right? You kind of sympathize with him a little bit, that he wanted to do good. And when he's saying to the corrupt IAD guy, he's like, yeah, I was saving this cop's life. Like, this undercover cop, I was saving his life by shredding his file before someone who was bad was going to get to it. So, like, I think Fusco's subplot in this episode is quite a good little B plot. And I also enjoyed the hilarity of him running into Carter in the building when he's about to break into the place. They just kind of awkwardly, because they're both kind of there on jobs for Reese and Finch, and they don't really realize it. So I'm looking forward to them finding out about each other at some point. I'm sure that's going to be quite entertaining. But yeah, that was the Fusco stuff. The main plot, and Carter does help with the main plot, of course, as well. She gives Finch the information about how these undercover cops work, and like how the filing system for it works, and the protocol and all that stuff. And she ends up helping by going and fetching Reese. When Reese is left for dead, Reese gets shot and is put in a burning car at one point. And when he pops out of the car, out of the trunk, Carter's just sort of standing there, like, saying, you need a lift. I also enjoyed that moment. You know, that's kind of the extent of her involvement. The big thing, though, is that Michael Kelly's character, Snow, from the CIA, shows up. You know, remember, he was the one that was coming after Reese and shot at him a few episodes ago, and they got lured out the city. Fusco planted those fingerprints upstate, but he's back. He suspects that Carter's working with him, and basically says, hey, I've seen his old partner, you know, he left her, he used her and left her. And I think this is a good example here of the thematics of all the plots lining up. You know, later on in the episode, what does the corrupt guy say to Fusco? He says that whoever you're talking to, meaning Reese, has used you. And here we have Snow telling Carter, hey, Reese is using you because this is what he does. Now, I don't believe him, but it is interesting that we have that through line between each of the plots where there's multiple people being told that Reese is using them. Now, I don't believe them, but I think it is a good thematic touch to have them all being hit with these, you know, these negative voices, these doubts at the same time. It kind of works. And they're coming from different directions as well, which is really good. You know, one's this kind of just cynical, corrupt guy. The other one's someone who specifically knows Reese. And we know that Snow is probably, he's trying to manipulate Carter into helping him. He's trying to make her not trust Reese so that she'll turn on him and help them, you know, capture him or kill him. So, and obviously there's more of him in the flashbacks as well, which I'll get to. But yeah, I mean, the main plot is Reese going with these guys on their deals, gets into a couple of shootouts. Ultimately, Vargas is told that he's got an undercover cop on his team, and he tells everyone to, like, you know, destroy their phones and put their guns into a bag so that, you know, they'll figure out whoever it is. And Reese actually goes out of his way to take the phone off of Michael, because Michael makes a call or a text to try and tell the other cops where the big, you know, meeting's going to go down. And he instead, well, he does do that, but then Reese intentionally fights him and accuses Michael of being the cop. But then when he scuffles with him, he actually pickpockets the phone, basically taking the heat so that when the phone rings, it'll be him that's got the phone on him. So Reese gets tied up, Reese gets interrogated. Because Michael's obviously realised that he's done this, because he did have the phone and now this guy's got it, he makes sure he's alone with them and he asks, who are you? Reese doesn't tell him too much, but makes it very clear that he knows exactly who he is, that he knows that he does really have a family, you know, he has a wife and a kid and all these other things, and ultimately makes it kind of clear that he's there to try and help. He's there to try and take down Vargas and whoever the mystery big bad person is, because Vargas isn't the target of all this investigation. He's like the middleman. There's someone high up the food chain who they're really trying to nab. That turns out to be a guy from the CIA, which we know Snow's also CIA. So this guy shows up, and very quickly, like, Michael's told, like, this won't matter. He's CIA. This is, like, basically government-sponsored drug trading and, criminal enterprise, because it's helping fund the war on terror. He says that they couldn't win the war on drugs, so they're using it to fund the war on terror, was the phrase that he used. They're just going to get him out. Like, they're just going to get him out. He's never going to face any consequences because this is all kind of sanctioned. I say kind of because he makes it clear that the whole, like, it's not like everyone in the CIA knows they're doing this. This is, like, you know, just certain levels of it do. Everything's shrouded in secrecy. It's not like everyone who works at the CIA knows that they're with an organization that are also doing this. But they're going to, like, get him out. He's not going to face consequences. And he actually kind of does, because it kind of ties into the flashback a little bit when Snow actually goes and gets him out of jail. So we come back to that in a little bit, but that's the main thing. I will say, like, if I'm going to, like, level a critique at the episode, is that it does the same trick that we've had a couple times, and there's nothing wrong with doing this, but it does feel like it's retreading a little bit of ground here versus maybe, like, other times we've had this, which is we have an episode where the flashbacks contain Reese's ex, right? The one he wanted to marry, but then obviously she moved on, got married to someone else, and the flashbacks in this episode involve Reese going to meet this new husband in 2008, right? He's in New York for a mission, and they kind of they try and kind of, like, misdirect us, because they say, hey, we're behind enemy lines and we're not supposed to be operating here in this country. And then there's a twist almost when he walks out the door and it's New York. He goes and meets the husband and chats with him, and just when the wife's about to be introduced to him, you know, like, they skedaddle, right? And there's a whole thing here with his handler lady that we met in the last, you know, well, not the last flashbacks, but the last time we had flashbacks with her. We had her kind of, like, training him and sort of taking Reese under her wing. She's here and she's saying, hey, you can't do this, you gotta detach yourself, you have to stay away from family, all that stuff. Every time we've had an episode that's had this ex in it, right, who's had, what's her name, Jessica, every time we've had a flashback with Jessica, excluding maybe the first set because that was, like, the pilot or the second episode or whatever, all of the plots that have had her flashbacks attached have had Reese helping someone who also has to struggle over either leaving their spouse to do whatever career path it may be that they're doing, or a family that they're trying to get back to. So again, we have this undercover cop who really wants to get back to his wife and son, but he's sort of like separated from them because of this job that he's doing, and he's determined to try and like take out this bad guy. It turns out his younger brother or older brother overdosed on drugs when he just got out of high school, and that's kind of why he's got this personal, almost, I wouldn't say vendetta, but like a calling to try and take down this drug empire, because it's all sort of tied to what ultimately killed his brother. But you've got all this with the main sort of thing being that he has to get back to his wife and son. There's a couple of times when he's talking to Reese and he's like, hey, if I don't make it, tell my wife I love her, and stuff like that. And it's all perfectly fine. It's just a little bit less impactful because we've kind of played this card a little bit before. We've played this card where Reese is helping someone who is trying to get back to a spouse, and it makes Reese think of, Jessica, and that he gave up that part of his life, and maybe that was a mistake all those years ago. We've played the card before, so it does feel like it's a little bit of diminishing returns as far as having that thematic link between those two very specific things. I've also seen Reese go undercover in like a group before. We had that, those thieves back from like episode 4 or 5. And that's not to say that this is not a good episode. It's actually a pretty solid episode. It's just, it feels like it's got a bit of a... One of the things that I've really praised this show for most of season 1 is how almost every episode, barring 1 or 2, have really felt like they've not just stuck to a formula. They've really found a way to make it feel fresh each time, a different type of person, a different type of case, a different type of format, a different type of like partnership, whatever it may be. There's been different little things in, whether it be structural, whether it be character, whatever it may be. Whereas this one, I do think it feels like kind of a combination of some plots we've had before. That's not the end of the world. It still made some good points. I really like the Fusco scenes, for sure. I enjoyed Carter working with Reese directly. That's always fun. But, it probably ranks a little bit lower for me versus some of the other episodes that we've had, just because it does feel like it's retreading some similar ground. But still good. I still had a good time with it, and it still had some good character moments. Particularly Fusco. The Reese character moments maybe feel like we've played these a little bit already, right? And I think inherently, like, every time we get a set of flashbacks that are to do with Finch, they're so fascinating because he is so closed off, and because it's all about the mythology of how the machine was built and his friendship with Ingram, all that stuff. The Reese flashbacks, I find, are a bit more hit and miss because some of them seem to be kind of, like, we're kind of hitting the same beats again, right? With the handler saying, oh, you got to give up civilian life. You can't have attachments. You can't have a wife. You have to leave all that behind so you can be effective. You're not one of them anymore. You're barely the same species, she says in this episode. You're now this, killing machine for the secret part of the government or whatever. And yeah, it does maybe paint some, intrigue as to just how bad some of the things that he had to do when he was working for them. And we've hinted at that, and I do appreciate that character building. But the general broad strokes of it in this set of flashbacks is very much just kind of mostly the same as what they've been before, particularly with this handler. Don't get me wrong, I do think the flashbacks here with the handler are better than that last set with her, where it was all basically just in that one room. Here, at least, it felt like there was a bit more to it, but the ultimate sentiment that you get from these flashbacks have kind of been the same for Reese for a little bit. I'd say it's a good episode, but definitely feels like, I think we're coming off like a little run of really good episodes. Like, I think, Root Cause was obviously one of the standouts of the season. I think the Lone Wolf and Cub knockoff episode, if you want to call it that, last time was a really interesting spin on an episode of this show, and did kind of like, for me, like, that idea of looking at Reese's character from a mythological perspective, of him being this modern version of a Ronin, was far more interesting to me than just repeating the notion that, oh, he can't have a normal life anymore, because we've heard that a few times. So but hey, there you go. That is my thoughts on the episode. that about does it, I think. Yeah, I don't think there was any standout action per se that I really wanted to bring up here, other than just the visual of Reese getting out of the burning car was quite funny. I also love that Carter wasn't really helping him get out. She just kind of stood there waiting for him to fight his own way out. Maybe she didn't realize he was inside the car yet. Maybe that was like just like, oh shit, I should have probably been helping him pry that open. But oh well, he survived. I did enjoy actually earlier on when Finch first comes to see Carter. Doesn't call her, he comes to see her. He just casually mentions that Reese has already infiltrated this smuggling ring, and Carter just sort of smiles and says, "Of course he has." That's a very Commissioner Gordon reacting to something that Batman's up to moment. That comparison's very, very apt there, I think I shall say. But anyway, there we go. That is my thoughts on this person of interest. So by all means, let me know what you think of Blue Code in the comments. Like, subscribe, all those things help out a lot. Help people find the channel, help people find the reviews. And of course, you can go above and beyond by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us over there for some monies every month and help keep all the content coming. But that is me, so thank you very much for joining. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?